There's a quiet moment, usually late at night, when everything slows down. No noise, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. And somehow that's when it gets the loudest. You replay conversations you had hours ago. You analyze words that no one else even remembers saying. You imagine outcomes that haven't happened and might never happen. And you don't do this because you want to. You do it because something inside you feels like it has to. Like if you stop thinking, if you stop analyzing, if you let your guard down for even a second, something will go wrong. Something will break. Someone will leave. You will lose control. So you stay in your mind, not because it's peaceful there, but because it feels safer than reality. And that's the paradox. The very thing that once protected you is now the thing quietly exhausting you. Your overthinking isn't random. It's not just a bad habit. It's not just anxiety. It's a strategy, a deeply learned survival strategy, one that was built in a time when being aware, being careful, being one step ahead was the only way to feel emotionally safe. But now, that same mechanism is running, even when there is no danger, and it's turning your own mind into a place you can't rest in. To understand overthinking, you have to stop seeing it as thinking too much and start seeing it as hypervigilance turned inward. Hypervigilance is a state where your nervous system is constantly scanning for threats. Originally, it's meant to protect you, but when it becomes chronic, it doesn't turn off. It just adapts. Instead of scanning the outside world, it begins scanning your thoughts, your decisions, your identity. You become both the observer and the threat. This is often rooted in something deeper. Emotional neglect, not always dramatic, not always visible. Sometimes it looks like growing up in an environment where your emotions weren't fully seen, weren't fully understood, or weren't safe to express. So you learn something subtle but powerful. Don't trust your feelings, think instead. And over time, thinking became your primary way of navigating life. Another key concept here is the default mode network, DMN. This is the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on the outside world, when you're resting, reflecting, or doing nothing. For many people, this network quiets down, but for overthinkers, it becomes overactive. It loops, it replays, it simulates scenarios, it tries to predict the future based on past emotional pain. And then there's avoidant attachment, when closeness once felt unpredictable or unsafe. You learn to rely on yourself, but not in a peaceful way, in a controlled way. You don't just feel your way through relationships, you analyze them. You don't just experience emotions, you dissect them. You don't just live, you mentally rehearse life before it happens, because deep down, you're trying to prevent pain before it ever arrives, but in doing so, you never actually leave the state of anticipating it. There is a kind of grief that doesn't look like grief. No tears, no visible breakdown, just constant tension, constant analysis, constant second guessing. This is the grief of the overthinker, the grief of never fully arriving in a moment. You don't just experience life, you monitor it, you question it, you reevaluate it, and slowly, you begin to lose something essential, presence. As Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Overthinking is often unconscious. It feels like this is just who I am, but it's not who you are. It's what you learn to do, and the cost of that learning is heavy. You sacrifice spontaneity for control. You sacrifice peace for certainty. You sacrifice authenticity for safety. You begin to fear things most people don't even notice. You fear saying the wrong thing. You fear being misunderstood. You fear making the wrong choice, as if there is only one right path. Even rest becomes uncomfortable, because when things get quiet, your mind fills the silence with possibilities. What if this goes wrong? What if they meant something else? What if I missed something? And so you stay mentally active, not because it feels good, but because stillness feels unsafe. Over time, this pattern doesn't just stay in your thoughts. It shapes your entire life. You might replay conversations for hours trying to decode hidden meanings, struggle to make decisions, even small ones, because every option feels loaded. Assume responsibility for other people's emotions, even when it's not yours. Feel exhausted after social interactions, not from the interaction, but from analyzing it afterward. Delay action because you're waiting for the perfect moment or certainty. Struggle to trust your intuition because you've learned to override it with logic. In relationships, you might overanalyze texts, overinterpret tone, create narratives that don't actually exist. Not because you're insecure, but because your mind is trying to protect you from emotional unpredictability. In your career, you might hesitate to take risks. You might over-prepare. You might feel like no amount of thinking is ever enough to guarantee success. In your sense of self, you begin to question everything. Am I doing this right? Am I enough? Did I mess something up? And here's the truth most people miss. These are not personality flaws. These are adaptive responses. At some point, this way of thinking helped you. It gave you a sense of control in an environment where control was limited. But now, the environment has changed, and the strategy hasn't. So the work isn't to fight your mind, it's to understand it, to begin witnessing your thoughts, instead of automatically believing them, to notice the pattern without judging yourself for having it. Because awareness is where unlearning begins. Healing from overthinking doesn't mean becoming someone who never thinks deeply. That's not the goal. Your depth, your awareness, your ability to see layers others don't. Those are strengths. The goal is not to remove your mind. It's to create space between you and it. This is where healing begins. Inner child reparenting. Start recognizing where this pattern began. Speak to that younger version of you, the one who had to think their way to safety. Remind them you don't have to do that anymore. Nervous system regulation. Your body needs to learn safety again, not intellectually, physically. Breathing exercises, slow movement, stillness without pressure. Shadow work. Look at the fear underneath the thinking. What are you actually afraid will happen if you stop controlling everything? Rejection, embarrassment, a loss? Name it. Because what is named becomes less powerful. And slowly, practice something unfamiliar. Softness. Make small decisions without overanalyzing. Let conversations end without replaying them. Allow silence without filling it. It will feel uncomfortable at first because you're stepping out of survival mode and into something new, something uncertain, but also something real. As the philosopher Seneca once said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And that's the quiet truth behind overthinking. You've been living in imagined futures, trying to control outcomes that haven't happened, while life quietly waits for you to return. So no, you don't need to fix yourself. You were never broken. You adapted brilliantly. But now it's time to evolve beyond that adaptation. The goal is not to be fixed, but to become whole. And if this spoke to something real inside you, then you're already beginning that process. You're becoming aware, and awareness is where everything changes. If you want more content like this, deeper, more honest, more real, stay close. Because this journey, you're not walking it alone.